point is, us understanding where has this crisis come from. And I think that the housing crisis in Europe now, and that we're all trying to campaign and change, is different than housing crises that have existed in the past. And I think in this room we have described very accurately the root causes, which are the neoliberal policies that started in the 1970s and 80s, which were about privatizing the public housing that was built, and then also the associated process of financialization and commodification of housing, which means that what used to be something that was affordable to the majority of people, even buying their home, or was delivered through the state, is now something that is an asset, that is traded on the financial markets, and it is this process of commodification of housing and financialization that is at the root of this crisis. And of course the challenge that faces us is the question is, well, why did that happen? And it happened back because of the crisis in capitalism itself in the 1970s. And this thing what David Harvey describes as the process of accumulation to dispossession. So capital is seeking new ways to try and make a return because it's not making money in the ways it used to. And in particular it has seen housing and land and property as a key place to make a return. And so what we've had is this rising inequality, the repression of wages, the creation of precarious work, and people haven't had money, so they've fueled demand through credit, through lending. And that has been done through housing as a key method of getting over this problem. So we have this growing inequality of wealth at the top, wealth in the global hedge funds, looking for places to invest. And they invested it in housing, the expansion of home ownership through the 1990s, through the 2000s. But now with the crash, the majority of people, in particularly the countries most affected, young people who are looking to access homes, can't buy their home. So what's the new form of financialization? It is the private rented sector. That is where they see the money to be made. And if you read the PricewaterhouseCoopers report from Real Estate Report from 2017, who ask investors, property investors, real estate investors, where is the future to make money from speculative, profitable investment? It's the private rented sector. That's where they see it coming from. So I think we are right to make that assessment, but the problem is we understand that in this room, but who outside this room understands that? And we have a real challenge to educate the people that we work with, to educate the majority that this process is destroying the concept of housing being a home or housing being affordable. And I think it's important and inspiring to hear this idea of the right to housing coming to the fore again. Because what do we mean when we say the right to housing? And we define it. The right to housing is housing as a home that gives a human being dignity to live, to be able to go out and get employment, to plan, to have a family, to have a sense of well-being, to be secure in themselves. And I think the importance of the human right to housing, that we assert that, is so important because that is the only challenge to the increasing commodification of housing that is planned, that is what is ahead of us. And just take for a second and imagine if our housing movements did not exist. Who would be defending the right to housing? Who would be standing with the marginalised? And I think that should all inspire us to continue, because we carry that. We are the ones who are going to achieve a right to housing. And we have to continue because the political system and the neoliberal model, despite failing and causing the crash, is in some ways stronger than ever. And that is our challenge. How do we construct an alternative? And social movements through history that have fought for human rights have been the ones that have achieved that human right. Not from laws, not from institutions. It has been the social movements from below. And I was struck by how new our movements are. Aside from a small number, these social movements, your campaigns, are only months old, a small number of years old. So we need to see that I think in a way we're at the start of a process to reassert and achieve the right to housing across Europe. And Europe is central because the neoliberal agenda has been driven from Europe. It has also been driven by the acceptance of neoliberalism by the social democratic parties, by the mainstream political system in Europe. So we have to reconstruct a social Europe from below, and human rights, the human right to housing is central to that. And people have talked about how they are in their country fighting the far right, who blame immigrants for this crisis. But we know the crisis came from neoliberalism and financialisation, not from immigrants. They have not caused this crisis. And that is central as well to us constructing an alternative Europe. The fight for housing is the fight for a progressive social Europe. So hopefully that gives us some sense of confidence on what we're doing. And to finish, I just think that, as I said, to reassert that we are in a battle, a war. It's an ideological war, a war against capital, and a war against the states and political parties who've been captured by the global 10%, the global elite. And so that is our struggle, but I believe we can win, and we've no choice but to continue.